If you're like me, those introductory musical notes transported you right back to your childhood living room, watching Bruce Timm square-jawed Batman thwarting the evil plots of the Joker, Two-Face, the Penguin, and the rest of his rogues gallery. It may feel like yesterday, but believe it or not, that was 25 years ago. Batman the Animated Series premiered in September of 1992, producing over 100 episodes across the original animated series and its successor, The New Batman Adventures. At New York Comic Con, Warner Bros. Celebrated the anniversary with a panel including producers Bruce Timm and Alan Burnett, Tara Strong, the voice of Batgirl, and of course, the goddamn Batman himself, Kevin Conroy, where they announced that the series will finally be heading to Blu-ray later next year. We spoke with the panelists about the legacy of Batman the Animated Series as they reflect back on the past 25 years of the Bat. Hi everyone, Dwight Tahana here from New York Comic Con. We're talking Batman, the animated series. It's 25th anniversary. We're talking with the showrunner and legendary producer, Mr. Bruce Timm. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, yeah.
Now, you mentioned at the panel that this was really your first crack at being a showrunner, a person that's in charge of all of this. Now, I mean, to have Batman the Animated Series be that first show, that's one hell of a legacy. What do you think it is about the show that has transcended decades and now generations, where people are showing their kids, and I'm sure they will show their kids, and so on and so forth?
Well, probably it's just that, we kind of cherry-picked bits and pieces of the show, or different elements of the Batman mythos, the things that we liked and were inspired by, both as kids and adults, throughout the entire history of Batman, things from the comics and from the the Adam West show and from even like the serials and the movies. So we looked at things that appealed to us and felt that hey, it's not brain surgery if we stay true to the spirit of the character and the comics. Then chances are those things that we liked, people will like our version of them as well. I mean, we didn't reinvent the wheel, really. It's a very, very faithful adaptation of the character, I think. So I think that's probably has a lot to do with it.
Now, as you're sitting on your porch enjoying your retirement, when you think back on the series, do you recall a moment or an episode perhaps where you look back on it and you say, that's it, like that's what this series was as a whole, and that's why people love it?
I'll tell you, when we were first developing it, or when I was first brought on to honcho the stories, we were trying to find, I got everybody in a room and we talked about Batman. I got Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski and several artists and directors and the story editors, and we just talked about Batman for 3 days and just talked about what we wanted to see and get out of it. We all went back to the comic books as a starting point. We weren't out to reinvent Batman. We wanted to put a real comic book on television. So, and the point at which I think we were on the right course was Heart of Ice, which everybody knows about, and the Two-Face thing that I was working on, because that was dark too. And we had a script with Poison Ivy in which she poisoned the district attorney. I forget the name of it though, but we had like about 3 scripts where I could say to writers, this is the show. Read these and you'll get the tone. So it was good.
How has the performance evolved, and how has your understanding of the character evolved throughout these past 25 years?
Well, when I first joined the cast, Batgirl was definitely a very young Batgirl, and she sort of found her footing and her strength as the series progressed. And then up until now, until the Killing Joke, she's obviously a woman. So it's completely a departure from where I started out. And so I've sort of grown up with Batgirl.
Now, it's hard to talk about Batman, the animated series, without talking about Andrea Romano. And she is notorious for wanting ensemble reads. Do you have a fun story or an anecdote about the times that you're doing those reads with all of these characters, and with Mark and Kevin and just these amazing actors all working in the same place?
Well, I will say that every single time I went in, I pinched myself, like to just be there watching them. And I would usually sit in between Conroy and Hamill, and when I watched Hamill break into his Joker laugh, it was just so incredible. And I mean, every time there was a new guest star or something, else that happened or some new great story concept. I really loved Girls Night Out when I got to play with Supergirl, and I mean, every single day was such a gift on that show.
Now, what is it, do you think, about your performance as Batman and this series in general that has transcended time? Yeah, I think that it's not hyperbole to say that you are the Batman for so many people, generations, and I think that that will still continue 25 years from now. What do you think it is about your performance, the writing, the show that has really made that work?
I think the fact that they never were talking down to the audience. They never tried to dumb down the stories. They spent a lot of money on the animation, a full symphony score, large casts of, and they really thought outside the box for everything for this show. They didn't just cast the traditional voice actors. They looked beyond. I had never done a voice before. This was the first animated voice I auditioned for.
And you did amazingly.
Can you believe that? But they were willing to look at someone who'd never done it before. I was a stage actor. And they brought in a lot of film actors and TV actors, all different kinds of actors, to see who could play the roles right. So it wasn't about making funny voices. It was about embodying characters. And I think what makes it so fresh is the stories are so fresh. The stories were so well written. And those are what's relevant to the audience.
Now, it's hard to talk about Batman the Animated Series without talking about Andrea Romano.
Yeah.
Oh, Andrea. Do you have a specific memory or anecdote from the time working with Andrea and with Tara and Mark that you can tell us?
Any anecdote with Andrea? The best I can think of is when, because she works so well with actors. She knows how to talk to actors. She knows how to get performances out of us without giving us line readings. If you give an actor a line reading, it's always going to sound like they're imitating somebody else. It's not going to sound organic. So in order to have it be organic, you have to guide the actor to find it on their own. But you don't have weeks of rehearsal to get there. You have minutes. So she has to be able to give you certain words to guide you to what they need. And she understands how actors think, and so she can guide you that way. What I think speaks volumes for Andrea is I've been in situations where, as I said, they would bring in actors from outside the traditional voiceover world, and so sometimes they'd be people who weren't familiar with working in this genre, and they just wouldn't get it. And she'd try to get the performance out of them, and she'd try, and she'd try, and she'd try. She'd give them this help, and she'd never humiliate someone. She'd always say, brilliant, wonderful, perfect, now try it this way. Great, that was great, now try it this way. Oh, that was fantastic, now try it this way. Until she got what she needed. And if she didn't get what she needed, she'd say, you were brilliant, we love you, congratulations, goodbye everybody. Okay, Kevin, come over here. We've got another actor coming in and we need you to read them through the role. You know, she's a decent person who respects actors, and she loves people.